So you sent over this really fascinating stack of materials for us today. We're doing a deep dive into a personal reflection journal.
Yeah, the 7-step QT notes.
Right. Dated August 26, 2026. And it's paired right alongside some really heavy ancient texts. Specifically, we're looking at Ezekiel chapter 46.
It is quite the combination. I mean, you've got these rigid, ancient property lines and highly specific architectural dimensions, and then it shifts into these deeply personal reflections on breaking bad habits.
And human willpower, right. Which, initially they look like they belong in completely different universes.
Oh, absolutely.
But our mission today is to follow the thread in these notes to see how ancient temple blueprints and royal inheritance laws actually unlock a completely different way to look at spiritual identity.
It's really cool. So let's start with the real estate. The Ezekiel text outlines how a prince is supposed to manage his land grants.
Yeah, right.
Right. So if he gives land to a son, it's permanent.
Right.
But if he gives that exact same land to a servant, it comes with a strict expiration date.
Because it reverts back to the prince in what the text calls the year of liberty.
Exactly. Yeah. That was essentially the ancient Israelite economic reset button.
Oh, wow.
So it was a specific year on the calendar where leased or indebted land returned to its original owners. It was this societal safeguard.
To prevent temporary servants from just permanently acquiring royal lands.
Right, ensuring they didn't end up shifting the balance of power.
I see. And there's another really fascinating rule attached to this, too. The prince can't just seize land from regular citizens to enrich his kids. He has to fund his own family's inheritance out of his own property. It operates almost exactly like an ancient trust fund rule.
Yes.
Making sure royal power doesn't just turn into this generational land grab that, crushes the common people.
That's a great way to put it. And that distinction between the son and the servant, that is the engine for everything else in these notes. The author zeroes in on the underlying principle here, which is permanence. A servant's status is temporary, right? It's conditional. It's based entirely on their role. But a son's status is this unshakable inheritance based entirely on identity.
So permanence defines your status.
Yeah.
But what's wild is how Ezekiel takes that very abstract idea of permanent status and literally builds walls out of it in the very next section of the text.
Right into the architecture.
Yeah. He moves straight from inheritance laws into the physical blueprints of the temple kitchens. I mean, why are we looking at ancient real estate laws right before examining temple kitchens?
Well, the architectural shift is jarring until you see the mechanism behind it. The text describes these highly isolated sacred chambers on the western end of the temple.
Okay.
And these are specifically designed for the priests to boil the guilt and sin offerings.
Offerings that dealt directly with the heaviest moral failures, right?
Precise.
So they required the highest level of ceremonial protocol.
Yeah, they had to be kept completely physically separate from the 4 kitchens out in the outer court.
The massive ones.
Right. Those outer kitchens were huge, over 60 feet long, or exactly 40 by 30 cubits. And they were built on this industrial scale specifically to process the sheer volume of common meals for the regular people.
Right.
It was all about keeping the daily chaos completely walled off from the sacred interior.
Wait, but the text says this massive separation is so the priests don't, quote, transmit holiness to the people.
Yeah.
That always trips me up. Isn't holiness the ultimate goal of a temple? I mean, it sounds like they're treating God's holiness like radioactive material that requires a hazmat protocol.
Honestly, that radioactive analogy is incredibly accurate for how the ancient world viewed the sacred.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't that God didn't want them holy or that the divine was malicious. It was just overwhelmingly potent. Ceremonial holiness was a weighty, intense reality.
So it's dangerous.
Right. If an unprepared person just casually bumped into these most holy offerings, it violated the boundary between the sacred and the common.
Oh, I get it. So the physical separation is really a protective measure.
Yeah.
It ensures people don't approach a holy God carelessly outside of the established procedures.
Right. It is all about maintaining the integrity of that boundary. And this is exactly where your reflection notes connect the ancient architecture back to modern psychology.
And willpower.
Yes, and willpower.
Because the notes argue that modern believers often get this boundary entirely backwards, right?
Yes, they do.
People completely exhaust themselves trying to live a perfectly holy life to try and earn the status of a son or daughter. They treat their behavior as the thing that secures their identity.
Which is crazy because the text is actually pointing to the exact opposite order of operations. Your notes highlight that believers don't live holy lives to become God's children.
Right.
According to this theology, they do it because grace has already established that permanent identity. They already set apart.
It's like wearing a professional team's jersey. You don't put it on and run onto the field hoping the fabric magically earns you a spot on the roster. Right. You wear the jersey because the coach already put you on the team.
I love that. And that profoundly changes how a person approaches something like breaking a bad habit.
Yeah.
Because if someone relies purely on willpower, they're essentially operating like the servant in Ezekiel's property loss.
Oh, man. Working desperately for a temporary status that could just expire based on performance?
Exactly. While relying on an established identity, well, that operates like the son.
Right. The inheritance is already permanent.
Yes.
So the note suggests this completely shifts the psychological burden of self-improvement. It takes the focus off desperately building a resume of good behavior to earn acceptance. Mm-hmm. And it moves it towards simply aligning your actions with an inheritance you already possess.
It is a fundamental rewrite of the motivation behind personal growth. Mm-hmm. The blueprint of those ancient walls and property lines, it was ultimately pointing to how humans understand their own standing.
It really reframes the whole concept of effort. And to wrap up our deep dive into your notes today, here's something to chew on. If this ancient framework is right, and true behavioral change flows much more naturally after an identity is perfectly secure, what does that mean for how we treat the people around us? Think about how you might manage an employee or raise a child. Are we constantly demanding they earn a status of approval that we really should have freely given them from the start?